Moving on to our next agenda item with Mr. Abdulaziz Bashir. He's an SSP Airworthiness Working Group members, and he will be speaking about the fatigue management in maintenance organization. Please join me to welcome Mr. Abdulaziz to the stand.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is a great opportunity to be among all of you, distinguished guests, members of GACA, and friends and colleagues. This topic is a little bit different because it touches people more than anything. Today, I will be taking you through one of the most underestimated topics within our aviation industry, which is fatigue management and maintenance organization. Now, I can assure you by the end of this presentation, you will be able to either strengthen what you have from fatigue management system, or you're going to have the ability of starting something from the ground up. Let me ask you for a favor here, okay? For the next couple minutes, I only want you to picture this. So it's 3:45 in the morning here in Riyadh. As you see, the airport is very quiet, calm, and collected. And one single mechanic is approaching the aircraft in his 11th hours of shift to work in a very critical safety task. Now, this mechanic is trained, and this mechanic is certified. This mechanic was following the procedure. But at that single moment, he was tired and fatigued. We all here, as an expert, knows that fatigue does not show up in the logbook entry. As an expert, we know that fatigue, it does not appear in the aircraft skin, nor it has a sound or an alarm to it. But make no mistake, fatigue has the ultimate power of switching or turning a very simple safety task into a hazard. Now, you might ask, why would I start with a story like that? Since we all in the aviation industry, we are no stranger in a scenario like that. We've heard story like that multiple times. As fatigue can be the difference between identifying a story or identifying a hazard or creating a hazard. Now, in this stage of the presentation, I should jump straight ahead and identify what fatigue really is. Because people sometimes mistake fatigue of being tired, and that is not just the case here. Fatigue, scientifically, is a psychological impairment that plays a big part with your judgment to what you see, to your reactions and timing, where you need to speed up, or you need to calm down or slow down. With your attention to details when you're walking around the aircraft and looking, is this crack or this is a dirt? Should I investigate this a little bit more, or should I just have it pass by? And finally, it plays a big part within your memory. We've encountered so many stories of an aircraft comes back to the gate or after taking off just because a mechanic forgot a wrench or forgot where's his flashlight and etc. It showcases that all these elements is the perfect recipe for fatigue to build up. Just when you think this is only your problem or my organization and your organizations, this has been studied and people looking after this for years. to make it a little bit more recent, an international study showcased in 2024, 52% of individuals or maintenance personnel encounter fatigue. Well, the shocking factor behind these 52%, only 34% admit they are fatigued. Another international study showcased in 2024 that maintenance personnel, 12% of them severely fatigued. Severely fatigued. Now, without showing any hands right now, you don't have to show me any hands, but I'm sure that some of you did not sleep 7 or 8 hours yesterday. I get some smiles here. I know. But you can only imagine that you did not sleep enough, which is factor number one of recovering from fatigue, and you are responsible of dispatching an aircraft or returning an aircraft or a components back to service. ICAO as well jumped into this by stating 25% of maintenance personnel contribute into fatigue. And lastly, 34% stated by ICAO admits their fatigue in the workplace. So all of these numbers that I'm showing you right now, I see some pilots on the right side of the stage, and I see some personnel as well in the aviation industry and military personnel. So everybody's asking, well, pilot gets fatigues, and ATC controllers get fatigues, and everybody gets fatigued. This is what we chose. This is our industry. But the exposure that the mechanics and the engineers go to is completely different piece. We're talking about people working night and day shifts and switching between them. Any task, weather is a big factor whenever they work. Sometimes it's windy and sometimes it's raining and the lighting is not that much and job needs to get done. Technicians and engineers, the moment they have more than 1 or 2 or 3 aircraft under their belt, they just need to develop a system within their head. I'm working on a Hawker right now. Let me put another hat and work on an Airbus. Let me put another hat and work on a Gulfstreams. And that's just another factor that their exposure is very high and different than others. Now, at this stage of the talk, it's very important to know how it works. So you get fatigued, and then all of a sudden, your alerting system get weakened a little bit, and then all of a sudden, that contribute into your judgment not aligned with what you're seeing. And again, here's where the hazard get created and the safety risk occur. I want you to know this. Fatigue, number-wise, one of the most unreported hazards within our aviation sector. And the question is why? Here are some of the factors. People tend to underestimate what fatigue really is and cannot point finger if they're fatigued or not. And it doesn't really help that it's invisible, that you cannot really see it. And you can judge yourself if you're fatigued or not, especially those upcomers within our aviation industry. Culturally wise, it plays a big factor. We tend to push the aircraft back in line, and we tend to get to complete the mission. And if you don't complete the mission, you probably get some eyes on you from people. And lastly, supervisors, people that has been put in place, tend to miss these signs, which plays big factor on the bigger picture. I get asked by GACA to do this presentation 2 weeks ago. And I could have easily pulled some pictures from the 70s and lesson learned from the 80s on from the early 2000s. We're so grateful for that experience and we have learned so much from it. Is it reality? I don't think it's the case. Saudi Arabia, as of right now, is going through unmatched growth in the aviation industry. We're talking more flights, more airports, more MROs and mechanics to complement a vision of 330 million passengers per year. And we all know, as an aviation expert, with more flights, more operations, and more pressure, risk does not grow as equal. It actually multiplies unless we manage the risk perfectly and correctly. Now, for some of you who don't know who I am, my name is Abdulaziz Al-Bashir, and I work for a company by the name of Alpha Star. Simply put, we have 40 aircraft, 1,000 plus people. My team and I try to make them safe every day. But fatigue was one of the factors that we have encountered. To simply put, we built a structure to tackle fatigue. Number one, we realized that it's not an individual work, it's a system work to spot any missing information. So we reflected back on the schedule, on the rostering. A system can detect who has been working back to back, what's the rostering look like, avoiding that excessive hours, and it's not a one-man job. A system can flag all these details. Number two, we braze by having a culture, but do we really have a culture where an individual can raise his hand or her hand and say, you know what, I'm fatigued. I cannot get it, I cannot do it. And that individual will not be judged, will not be asked, it actually will be encouraged. Number three, we invested heavily when it comes to training and a level of awareness. And guess what? We started from the top. Managers, supervisors that put in place, do they really understand the signs and the symptoms behind an individual being fatigued in the line? Do they call it out? Mechanics and engineers, do they understand the patterns of being quality sleep and what's a deep sleep mean and how can we help them to understand that a little bit more of just a simple level of awareness? Number three, very simple stuff, nutrition and level of exposure to the weather in terms of hot weather operation and cold weather operation. Just a level of awareness and encouragement goes all the way. Lastly, with the infrastructure that we have, we tried as much as possible to provide a very safe and sustainable free environment that can encourage them to do their duties in the best way possible. Now, I know we are here from a different entities and everybody from a different organization. I'm trying here to make this relatable. This is not just a talk. This is what I do in my organization, and it could be better. But let's discuss what GACA said and what the industry recommend. Number one, you have to have a straight policy, a concord that tells everybody in the organization what they can owe and owes as an individual and understand the standard that needs to be met. Number two, you can go straight ahead to the GACAR and pull the guidelines behind fatigue management system and tailor something very suitable to your organization. I remember Sulaiman al-Tarayif yesterday say something very simple and strict with me. Forget about all this fancy stuff, and sometimes keeping it simple goes along the way. Keeping it simple with your organization goes all the way with you. I tell you what, one thing, if you can remember out of this talk today, just remember that fatigue is real, fatigue is invisible, but in a positive note, fatigue is manageable. And at the same time, managing fatigue is part of your safety. Ladies and gentlemen, to close, I want you to remember one thing. You and me have the ultimate power of stopping that mechanic that was approaching the aircraft to work in a very critical safety task from any hazard to occur. At the end of the day, fatigue leaves no fingerprints. It leaves consequences. And in aviation, consequences matters. One thing to remember, that in our industry, consequences, it would have taught us and we learn from to be in that position. At the end of the day, fatigue is not an additional task. It's part of what your safety culture is all about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abdulaziz. Thank you very much for the very interesting and informative presentation. We're coming to our noon break, so please can we be back at 11:50? Thank you.